Hi everyone, welcome to Difference Frames the World, an independent channel where you can see the world from a different perspective. Today we discuss why the United States fears China and always promotes the China threat theory. In previous videos, we mentioned how the US became the world's only superpower after the collapse of the former Soviet Union in the early 1990s. Since then, it has been trying to maintain its global dominance more desperately than ever. In the 1980s, when China began its opening up and reform policy, the United States had a good relationship with Beijing as it needed China to counterbalance the USSR, and it also wanted to use China's low labor cost for more profit. The honeymoon between the two countries was over after the Tiananmen Square incident in June 1989, when the West led by the US tried to initiate a color revolution to overthrow the Chinese authorities. Even after 1992, when Deng Xiaoping urged China to make bigger strides and open its doors to the West more widely, the US was not as friendly to Beijing as it used to be. For instance, China should have joined the WTO earlier if the talks between China and the US had not been prolonged for many years. In those years before China was formally admitted into the World Trade Organization, the US relentlessly pressed Beijing to make compromises on almost all fronts. China became a WTO member state 2 decades ago. Since then, it has grown into a global powerhouse and the most significant contributor to world economic growth, far exceeding the US, Japan, and Germany combined. Afraid of Beijing's quick rise threatening its global dominance, the United States has constantly resorted to sanctions to impede China's progress in the past 3 decades. It has systematically tried to isolate China by rallying support from Western nations while aggressively promoting the false narrative of the China threat theory, which portrays China as a danger to the world. This propaganda is nothing more than a blatant attack on China's reputation. In reality, China has never threatened any other country. It is crucial to recognize that China has not engaged in warfare for over 40 years, and the nation has prioritized economic growth and development. This long-standing commitment to peaceful progress highlights China's identity as a peace-loving country. In stark contrast, the United States has a well-documented history of military involvement across various regions of the world, particularly in the Middle East, where it has often played a controversial role. From the start of the Afghan War in 2001 and the Syrian war that followed shortly, to the ongoing Israeli-Palestinian conflict that killed thousands, the United States has been deeply involved in these international disputes. The US tends to be apprehensive about any powerful nation or region emerging in Eurasia, suggesting that the concerns extend far beyond China alone. The White House used to treat Britain, Japan, Germany, France, and other EU countries as America's threats before China. Historically, the rise and fall of dominant nations have been pivotal in shaping the course of human history. As new powerful entities emerge, they redefine geopolitical dynamics and create new alliances and rivalries. However, the ascendancy of a nation is often followed by its decline. Just as the Spanish Empire flourished during the Age of Discovery, it ultimately diminished. The British Empire, where the sun never set, was another example. It experienced a remarkable ascent during the age of colonialism, but as this era gradually faded into history, so did the empire's prominence and prestige. In the wake of its decline, the United States emerged as the dominant global power, a hegemon whose rise can be traced back to the prolonged period of turmoil and warfare that plagued the great powers of Eurasia like the First World War. Geographically positioned as a lucky country on the fringes of the world, the United States ascended to its hegemonic status with relatively little effort in the decades that followed World War II. This unexpected emergence stemmed from the chaos and conflict that unfolded across Eurasia as a result of World War II, which accidentally created a vacuum that the US was able to fill. From a broader historical perspective, the United States' chances of maintaining a central role in world affairs are lower than the odds of winning a lottery. The American dream is built upon 3 fundamental pillars: the relocation of the world's power center from London to Washington, the transfer of the global production center from Eurasia to America, and the shift of the capital center from Britain to the United States. Nevertheless, as China steadily rises and becomes increasingly powerful, the foundations of the American dream face the threat of collapse. The United States might find it increasingly challenging to sustain its hegemonic position in this evolving global landscape. Consequently, the only viable strategy to ensure the longevity of its hegemony may lie in efforts to decelerate the rapid advancement of China and its growing influence on the world stage. Because of the former Soviet Union's collapse in the early 1990s, the West has pivoted toward inventing new threats for some reason. Notably, they have focused on the specters of Russian ambition, Islamic terrorism, and China's rise as primary threats to their national security. This strategy serves a dual purpose. It not only justifies the massive financial allocations for defense, but also helps maintain the influence and profits of specific sectors like the military-industrial complex. To substantiate the rightfulness of excessive defense spending, three critical parties form the backbone of this relentless effort to exaggerate the so-called China threat. The arms industry profits from securing military contracts with the Pentagon and its allies. The pharmaceutical industry benefits from government contracts for medical supplies and various health initiatives, and the lawmakers who represent different interest groups. They need an imaginary enemy to empty the U.S. taxpayers' pockets. After the 2008 Beijing Olympics, China was chosen to become America's rival. If the subprime crisis had not happened that year, and the U.S. needed China to save Wall Street, the two countries should have started the trade and tech wars under Obama's presidency. Even so, the U.S. intensified provocative activities in the South China Sea and across the Taiwan Strait, along with Taiwan's DPP authorities and the Philippines. The rapid pace of China's economic development creates unease within the United States, leading to heightened concerns over economic competition and geopolitical influence in the region. Since the implementation of significant market reforms and the adoption of opening up policies in the late 1970s, China has witnessed an extraordinary increase in its gross domestic product (GDP) from $150 billion in 1978 to $18 trillion in 2023. In 45 years, China's economy multiplied by 120 times. This economic transformation has remarkably lifted over 800 million people from absolute poverty, one of the most impressive cases of economic development in human history. China has established itself as the world's second-largest economy based on nominal GDP measured by the US dollar. However, it is the world's number one economy, about 1.3 times America's, measured by purchasing power parity. In 2023, China's PPP-adjusted GDP was close to $35 trillion, while that of the US was slightly over $27 trillion, according to data from the World Bank. The United States perceives China's rise as an increasing threat, as Beijing's economic expansion could indirectly threaten its long-standing hegemony. Take the Belt and Road Initiative, which aims to enhance global trade infrastructure by investing in a network of ports, roads, and railways across 155 countries, as an example. Through this ambitious program, China is seeking to boost its economic growth and position itself as a leader in global infrastructure development, which will shift the dynamics of geopolitical power in the coming years. China's economic influence is expanding significantly, far beyond its traditional bounds in Asia. The country is building a more robust sphere of influence in Africa and Europe, which not only signifies China's increasing role in global markets, but also paves the way for forming new partnerships in international trade in the years to come. Some American politicians believe that the ascent of any country, particularly one as large as China, will inevitably lead to the oppression or intimidation of smaller nations, as America's rise to power was at the expense of other countries. However, the current situation reveals that the United States cannot articulate a coherent and effective diplomatic strategy towards China. The challenges are compounded by a lack of competent diplomats like Henry Kissinger. If we compare Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi with U.S. Secretary of State Blinken, we can find the difference is bigger than the sharp contrast between a sophisticated professor at university and a naive kid in kindergarten. China's development model is fundamentally different from that of the United States. Unlike the U.S., which has historically engaged in wars and conflicts to secure resources and exert influence, China advocates for a cooperative approach to economic growth. This strategy emphasizes mutual benefit and collaboration with other countries rather than domination. As a result, China has not only experienced significant economic growth, but has also garnered greater popularity and respect among nations worldwide, positioning itself as a leading advocate for global cooperation and development. China's prosperity is not merely the result of fleeting successes in isolated sectors, rather, it is the culmination of sustained, long-term development across various dimensions of society. Over the years, we have witnessed significant transformations in China, marked by a transition from absolute poverty to a robust economy, as well as substantial improvements in education and healthcare. This evolution has been characterized by careful planning and implementation, leading to consistent and reliable progress. Today, China is a dynamic and influential global power, no longer a backward and weak nation in the past centuries of humiliation. Historically, China has been a nation that values peace and stability. Suppose China had been belligerent like some barbarians in the early 15th century, when Chinese General Cheng Ho commanded the world's most potent fleet. In that case, people in most countries would speak Mandarin, not English, Spanish, or French. The so-called China threat theory is merely a lie. If you have other comments, please put them below so other viewers can share your insights. Thanks for watching our videos, and please subscribe to our channel if you have not done that so you will not miss our uploads every day. Like, forward and share our videos with your friends, helping DFTW become a club with 1 million subscribers shortly. Thanks again.